That Naturopathic Podcast. TNP.
Hello there.
Hi, and thanks for joining us. I'm Dr. Michelle Pobega, naturopathic doctor.
And I'm Dr. David Miller, ND, and we hear your frustrations. This show is for you.
This show is for you if you're feeling like your current healthcare strategy is not getting to the root cause or the underlying reasons for your health.
This show is for you if you've been told that you're fine, but you definitely don't feel very well.
This show is for you if you're walking out of your doctor's office with 1, 2, 3, 4, or even 5 medications without any mention of diet, lifestyle, or a long-term game plan.
This show is for you if you've got several specialists taking care of you, but no one is really putting all the pieces together.
This show is for you if you believe that health should be part of healthcare. These problems have solutions.
We know it.
Our patients know it.
And we want you to know it.
Naturopathic medicine is the solution that you should know about.
Welcome to another episode of That Naturopathic Podcast. It's time to get smarter today. Again, right, Michelle?
Sure is. We have a repeat guest, one of our favorites.
See a three-peat?
Three-peat,
It
four-peat.
three-peat.
I don't know.
Like
but anyways, we have the lovely, the wonderful, the super intelligent, but also heart-centered Jonathan Beatty as a naturopathic doctor. He's been practicing for 17 years. And I've said his whole bio in previous episodes. All you really need to know as listeners is he's an all-around badass. He understands the science, but understands how to amalgamate it with like foundational, true naturopathic practices. And it's a pleasure to have you back on the show again, John. So thanks for coming in.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure chatting with you guys. And yeah, I always like coming back here because we just get along and you guys always have great questions and always, I don't know. I feel like you lead to the improve, like your show is like leading to, helping our profession improve. And, it's one of the few podcasts that I do actually regularly listen to. Like you guys are on my Spotify. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're one of my Spotify like follow subscriptions. Yeah. And I'm a snob. So yeah,
that's high praise.
I'll take it though.
I think my heart fluttered a little bit on that one. I was like, oh shit.
You gotta stay on top of like what's going on in your profession, and like everybody's got different interpretations of naturopathic medicine and what it means to them, and you can learn things like valuable things. Everyone's got different life experiences. So like I used to do a ton of preceptoring, like always having students. And I loved it because in a way they bring different ways to think about things. And sometimes it's even how you need to teach something to different people then teaches you better how to teach it to your patients, or even how to think about a problem, right? Like when people ask you a question, that is what sparks innovation. That's what sparks progression in medicine. Right.
Totally.
And that's a big part of what we'll talk a bit about today, right, John? Like as a sort of broad focus, if you will. It's like, well, if we're only doing what we were sort of taught in naturopathic medical school or naturopathic college, and we're not thinking of the past and how that some of the the views of the past might actually be integrated with cutting edge scientific stuff that we don't know enough about. Maybe let's call it some vibrational medicine and other stuff that would sort of broadly be categorized as such, then we're going to get out of touch, right? And so what I'd love for you to do is, best as you can, help us get in touch with some of the foundational aspects of naturopathic medicine, which includes maybe the future and the past.
Yeah, well, no, and it's funny because I know we were chatting about this before you guys hit record, but I was kind of joking that like if you practice medicine the way you were trained in med school, and I don't care if you're a medical doctor, naturopath, chiropractor, you're probably pretty out of date because it takes them so long to update curriculums. It takes a lot of time for new understanding in medicine and like new research to actually be integrated into the teaching process. And it's just an unfortunate kind of like aspect to how curriculums get developed, how licensing takes place, how regulation of a profession takes place, but it kind of ends up always being a little bit antiquated. Like I remember when I was in school, and you still see this stuff where medical dogma takes about 50 years to change. And, by that, I think it was 1977 was the first study where they showed that giving an antibiotic to a child with an ear infection increased the severity of the infection and the likelihood they were going to get a recurrent infection. And pretty much like every decade, you can see this research repeated. And still to this day in practice, because I do a lot of pediatrics, I see these patients showing up. Oh, they got an ear infection. They were on this antibiotic. I'm like, oh, like we're seriously still there. Like you're supposed to wait 3 days before you prescribe an antibiotic in those cases. And, I guess that's not really naturopathic medicine, but it's just a good example of where that dogma doesn't get repaired. And it's like that old algorithmic approach to medicine. It works for some, but not for all. And really what I think the key to naturopathy is, and really functional medicine, is individualizing the medicine. And I feel like even functional medicine's kind of been co-opted into, you're just like a doctor who throws supplements at people. Like, oh, everybody needs magnesium, oh, you got a GI problem, we're going to hit you with probiotic digestive enzyme L-glutamine, like here's the formula for all digestive concerns, without understanding why that person has a digestive concern, that kind of stuff. And so I find that, if you're practicing the way you're trained in school, like school, the real key is safety. Like all your licensing exams, all your, your boards, all of that, it's learning the basics of like how not to hurt somebody, but it doesn't necessarily make you good at being a doctor. Like I used to joke all the time with preceptors that, the first 2 years of med school are the most important, because that's when you learn the most about how the body works. And then they try to teach you to forget all of that stuff as you learn how to treat things. Like type 2 diabetes. You know what? It's not a metformin deficiency, nor is it, and rarely is it a chromium deficiency. Right? Like throwing 200 micrograms of chromium, yeah, sure. If somebody's deficient, that may help a little bit with their insulin reception. You also probably need vanadium for the GLUT4 transporters, because sure, you can get insulin signaling, but if you can't get the glucose transporters to the cell membrane, the cell can't uptake the sugar anyway. But you also need to understand that that's a lifestyle condition, right? You eat a garbage diet and you don't move, well, you're teaching your body insulin insensitivity. If you have a lot of inflammation in your system, you're going to have that insulin insensitivity. And so it's like all those factors is what type 2 diabetes is. It's not a supplement deficiency. It's not a medication deficiency. It's a lack of movement. It's poor quality food.
Or sleep. You hate your job. You hate your life. You hate your wife. There's a whole bunch of but you know what we're getting at here, John? I'll sum it up. Like, basically, it's really hard to do good. It's this kind of medicine, I think, is quite difficult to do well. And we even remember we had Michelle, you remember we had Dr. Paul Anderson on, and he said it is very, and he's like genius guy, he said it's very hard to be minimally competent. And that's the truth. So that's why it is nice to have you on, because you're brave enough to try and do it quite thoroughly. And I know you try for efficiency too, because we still have to try and be efficient, because that other kind of medicine is quite efficient. Let's say it doesn't mean it's effective in terms of does it get to the root, and does it get to the depth? But you can give something to someone quick with some rationalization of a minimal framework that works.
Well, it's effective. It's effective because it sells, but it's not efficacious. Right? Which is that it works. But yeah, no, you're spot on. And I mean, it's like humans were never designed to be sedentary cave dwellers. That's kind of one of the phrases I give to patients all the time when they're like looking at me going, well, what do I need to do? I'm like, you need to change some lifestyle factors here. Like and they look at me and they're like, that's tough. And my answer is yes.
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's yes, it is.
It is.
But you have a choice. And
But that difficulty is on both sides, John. I think that difficulty is for the patient, for sure. But I think it's very difficult for any kind of doctor of whatever to do this stuff well, because you're going to be learning. I think you'll be learning until you're done. At least that's the way
Oh, yeah. If you're not, you're like, if you think you've learned it all, I've been doing this 17 years, and I think what I've learned is how little I know.
Yeah. But it's hard, right?
Dave and I always say that the more we learn, the more we realize we don't know. Like, it's just.
Well, and this is, I mean, this is the trouble I have. Like, I mean, I've had multiple, I always call them medical midlife crises, as I've progressed through my practice. And it's entirely because as you learn more and more about the function of the human body, you know, we have to get our hubris out of the way that, oh, we're the authority, we're doctors. Like, we don't know anything about how the human body works. You know, and I know a lot more than most people, but I also,
Yeah.
the trouble is in knowing that, like I say, medicine often mistakes understanding because we understand the how something's happening, that we think we understand the why something's happening, and we don't. And so this is where, like, a lot of mine is getting patients getting them into their state of discomfort. And I would say a lot of what you end up doing in practice, like the toughest part is learning how to be a very good coach. And getting your patients, like learning how to motivate people to get better. Now, if you do oncology, generally you're going to have a pretty easy time because people are looking death in the face. If you do a lot of cardiovascular disease where you've had people that have had heart attacks, I love working with those patients. You can ask them to do anything, they do it. The trouble is when you get the people that are like, quote unquote, not sick enough. And you know, we get into habits. We've got a lot of sort of trained beliefs, and a lot of it is shattering our patients' beliefs about themselves and what they can be and what health can look like for them and what their life can be, and then teaching them how to basically block out the naysayers. Because I also find friends and family will, like, if they don't have the willpower to do something, it's easier for them to short circuit their friend, like your friends and families, to try to short circuit you than it is for them to accept, like, oh, you have the willpower to do something. And the people around you, if they don't have it, what they're going to try and do often is try to short circuit you, because they're going to try to bring you down so that they don't feel guilty about not being able to do it themselves.
Exactly.
So you get into a lot of psychological work with people. You end up doing a lot of counseling and a lot of coaching. And so I find like the toughest thing in medicine is learning how to learn your patients and learning how to figure out how to motivate them. Because I mean, I think you had Dr. Yash on, and he's like, everybody knows it's better to eat kale than candy. Although I'd argue with that one sometimes a little bit on you know, when kale can actually be a huge problem, and when candy, as much as I don't promote it, would probably be easier on certain systems. But that aside, it's that mental coaching side of things that's really problematic, and undoing a lot of past held beliefs that we had in the medical community that really aren't founded in science. Like, I don't know if you guys, like, I mean, I'm the pro salt generation now.
I love salt.
Which is, I love salt. Like, take stupid amounts of salt myself.
Salt in the morning, salt in all my water, pinch, 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 all over the place, baby.
Like salt in my coffee, like which also really nice. Right, salt in my water,
Caramelizes
salt
the
in my
coffee a little. It's very good.
Right, it enhances the sweetness. But for instance, like, I don't know how many of you guys deal with like cardiovascular disease, how much you see AFib, like atrial fibrillation. I don't know why I see a ton of it. I think it's very popular, or very popular, not popular, common in the world of distance running and marathoners. But and again, you also see it in a lot of older people, because what we're witnessing is the anti-salt generation. Everything's, I mean, you can still go in the grocery stores and see low sodium, low sodium, low sodium. Well, did you know that low sodium or hyponatremia is associated actually with worse outcomes in congestive heart failure, worse outcomes in atrial fibrillation, and you're actually about 2.5 times as likely to have AFib if you're hyponatremic than if your sodium levels are normal. Same thing, hypokalemia. I think it's 1.5 times more likely to have atrial fibrillation. And if you've had a heart attack and you have low potassium, you're 4 times more likely to have atrial fibrillation.
People are still very hung up on that low salt. I'll get older generation coming, well, like, well, low salt this because my husband had a heart attack, so we're eating low salt now. It's like, you don't have to actually fear salt, but it's like in one ear and out the other with that generation. It's so tough. But it was the salt fix he wrote, and he was like, there are no studies to corroborate that it actually causes hypertension. Like,
oh, I've had multiple fights with multiple patients on this, and I think there's less than 5% of the population has a genetic thing where they're sensitive to sodium.
Yeah.
But again, it usually comes when you parcel it well with potassium, that usually goes away. But I've seen multiple cases where, literally patients have had heart attacks, or have had, chronic AFib patients. Their cardiologists are still telling them low sodium diet, low sodium diet. And then they come and see me and I'm like, well, how's that working for you? And they're like, I still have AFib even on the medications. We start throwing salt at them, and all of a sudden you just see the AFib just, start to decrease in frequency and severity until it goes away. And I'm going like, and they're going, really? Like, that's it? And like, yeah, you can get off your meds now because you've replaced the salt in your body.
I mean, I feel like that falls hand in hand with even like the whole thing of eating grains for breakfast and avoiding animal fats and avoiding egg yolks if you still have cholesterol because of fear. Like it's all that outdated ideas of nutrition.
But I will be
very true.
Devil's advocate here and say, if your idea of a low salt diet is now you're eating less like shitty processed frozen foods that are just high in sodium, specifically, that's different, and you can almost understand some of that, but that's not like sodium chloride with other trace minerals that would be like a healthy form of salt that animals will climb 80-degree inclines to lick that stuff.
Seriously.
It's clearly important.
Yeah
My rule in my office is you take your table salt and you put it with your cleaning products, and then you go get, and this is one where I do try to say actually the Himalayan salt. And unfortunately, just because we've poisoned our oceans a little too much. And in the realm of trying to reduce our plastic intake and PFOAs, the Himalayan salt is lower in those, which is why I recommend that one.
What about, because I've heard also Redmond's real salt has less impurities than even Himalayan salts versus Celtic sea salt. So I usually make that my gold star for most people because it comes from a cleaner salt waterbed in Utah or something, rather than mined somewhere in the Himalayas with heavy metals and all that stuff. Although I don't think we're ever going to get anything 100% pure. This world has been contaminated. So we have to also be realistic.
Well, and that's it. And so if a salt that's like been tested and shown to be lower, that's a great one. I also used to use a lot of La Peludier Celtic sea salt. And again, it's the stuff that looks like, the salt you throw on your driveway. But a lot of it was because of the high levels of all the trace minerals in it. And on that topic, it's like those weird things like germanium. Right? We don't know what it does in the human body, but we know that if you're born with a genetic inability to uptake germanium, you'll last about 2 days on Earth. Like, right. Like, it's one of those crazy things where you're like, wait, we have no idea really what germanium does. But if you have this inborn error of metabolism and you can't use germanium, you die within 48 hours of birth. And it's like, that's, just as we talk about our scientific hubris about what we know. And I'm hoping somebody out there hears this and like messages me and is like, germanium actually does this, because I would love to learn. And it's been a while since I've looked it up, but yeah, it's one of those like wild ones. And then even on the the topic of intoxication in our world, same idea. It's trying to get, sometimes it's simple changes like, hey, do you have nonstick pans at home? Everyone's like, yeah, I do. Okay, throw those out. They're like, what? And like, throw them out. Like, don't even give them to Goodwill, because I feel like, just harming another human.
There's no goodwill in giving that. Yeah.
Right. Like, there's no goodwill in giving that. Like, giving that away to somebody is like you're poisoning your neighbor at that point. And people always look at me a little and think, you're really that intense. But when you look at PFOA, I don't know how much you guys see thyroid conditions, and mainly subclinical thyroid. So this is a patient where you're going to see normal labs, but they have every single symptom. And what the one thing we do not measure, thyroid receptors, thyroid hormone receptors, right? THRs. Do you have a test for that? No, we don't. So I don't really care what your T3 levels are, your T4 levels are. Do you know what the mechanism of action is for PFOA and thyroid disruption?
Do tell.
It decreases your mRNA of TSH receptors and thyroid receptors. Your body can't listen anymore. Yeah.
And so everything is receptor dependent. Like, for those who don't don't know that. I think that's a real, I remember learning that in university. That's a long time ago. But the impact of things on the body is receptor dependent, and that just shows how important it is if the receptors are mangled.
Crazy.
Right. Counting light bulbs means nothing if you have no lights to plug them into.
Yeah.
Right. Like your room's going to be just as dark, but every time we measure, like, oh, I don't know, he's got a box of like 100 light bulbs. It can't be that. Well, do they have a light? Well, we don't have a way to measure that. Okay, well, we don't know. And then you look at, so this is, and we don't really have a real great way of testing PFOA toxicity. But it actually creates a genetic change. So even if the PFOA comes in, creates this genetic change in your system, how messed up is that? And then leaves. And so so it doesn't really matter what your PFOA levels are at the time. You've now created this thyroid imbalance that you're not necessarily going to see, your clinical classical hypothyroidism. But weirdly, you may see a patient that benefits from thyroid hormone. Like I have one every time we test her blood because she's in her 80s. And how I got onto this topic was she was a cardiac patient that came to see me. She was on 5 different meds, but she had every thyroid symptom, but her tests were normal. Anyway, took a chance, got her consent. We prescribed her some thyroid hormone, and lo and behold, we were able to get her off all 5 cardiac medications, and all of her cardiac symptoms went to normal. To the point her cardiologist came in the room and said, yes, amazing. We finally got your drugs figured out. At which point she said, actually, I don't take them anymore. I'm taking thyroid. And it's, one of those areas where we often overlook like the mechanism of the disease. And like functional medicine isn't about finding your sort of symptom algorithm, your supplement algorithm, which is what I find everyone's trying to automate their practices, which I'm not opposed to entirely, but you still have to individualize what you deliver to your patient and understand that hypothyroidism, for instance, has multiple causes. Atrial fibrillation. Is it hyponatremia? Is it hypokalemia? Is it hypothyroidism? Like what is the cause of that symptom? But the trouble is we treat these signs and symptoms as diagnoses.
But this is where I was saying it's hard. Like you're talking about a kind of paradox where you do have to treat the individual, but at the same time, there's like this is going through my head a lot as practice evolves too. There's a bunch of like foundational, like that's part of what we're talking about today, foundational things that probably everyone should do, including maybe we should get rid of our our nonstick pans. I wanted to bring up something that probably about 10 years ago I heard more about it, and then I'm reading about it now, like grounding. Like should I make sure that I'm not being exposed to the magnetic field of the electrical outlets changing my voltage, which you can actually measure with a multimeter.
Geopathic stresses.
Yeah, some of those stuffs are hard. Maybe that's harder to fix, but I mean, and then you bring that in. Like, what are the things you can actually do something about? Like, I was going to make my own grounding sheet because I'm like, well, if my sleep is okay, but I could make it better by improving my exposure to dirty electricity and grounding myself, literally plugging my blanket into the outlet or outside, then why wouldn't I do that? That's not individualized maybe, but it's something that we could do. And that's where I struggle, John, sometimes is these like those foundational things that we could all do, which we still have to individualize, I guess, because you can't do them all.
Yeah. No. Well, yeah, but you are spot on though. It's like we should teach the fundamentals of healthy living to keep patients out of our offices. Like that's my whole joke with all my patients is I don't want to see you. You keep coming back. I'm not doing my job. And you're spot on, like on the topic of grounding. I mean, what makes you work? Electrochemical gradients, right? Like we're basically big balls of electricity. We'll get into light in a second here. And as we build up, like electricity creates fields and electricity creates gradients. It's how every cell in your body works. Like if your cell cannot hold an electrochemical gradient, and generate electricity, and not just nerves, but every cell, they die. Like that's the fundamental aspect of life. And so, if you go tubing in the summer and you're out on a boat, what's the best way to knock the kids off the tube? You go in a couple circles because you get wave interference. And so there's additive interference. You get that nice peak if 2 waves hit, and then you get that like sort of double that double wake, and then you get a double trough next to it. It's the same kind of thing that happens with electromagnetic radiation. And the sad part is we don't know enough, nor here, I think part of the trouble is we don't have the capacity to measure these electrical fields at the single cellular level. So we don't fully actually understand how they work in the body entirely. Like, we have ideas through understanding electronics theory and like electricity, I guess quantum biology is the term people are using now. So we can theorize how they work, but it's the same idea. Yeah, if you've got dirty electricity, which is a huge problem, and you've got EMFs, and we can touch on 5G even, you know, when you have these electromagnetic frequencies, you are creating wave interference at some level in the body. And so, and how do you get rid of that in your home? You ground it. Every house is grounded. Everything you do, any high voltage appliance in your house has grounding. Everything you do, you want to put a GFI on it, right? So that if
What's
the
that?
electricity, they're the interrupters, like, you know, in your electrical socket, there's like the button to reset the outlet. That's a GFI. I can't remember the exact what it exactly stands for. But basically, if there's an interruption in the electricity, or there's going to be a surge or something that might damage it, it shuts itself off. And so we protect our electronics, but we don't protect ourselves. And this is an area where, like, I'm big. Every morning I go for a barefoot walk outside.
Cool.
I don't care how cold it is. The really cold mornings like today it's rough. But as part of a practice of grounding, you can hold a voltmeter in your hand. You can plug it into the ground, put on rubber shoes, and watch the the insane lack of voltage that's being created because you're not connecting electronically with the earth. And then as soon as you take those shoes off, you stay barefoot on the ground, you'll ramp up to say 60 volts or something like that.
There was something, it was our colleague Tara Guzzo sent me something like a year or two back, and it was a video, and it talks about how this guy started saying chronic diseases of modern day really started to just like escalate when we started putting rubber on the bottoms of our shoes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's well known. And peripheral neuropathies. If you want grounding mats in peripheral neuropathies, almost regardless of cause, wondrous treatment. And the other one is with lights. You get into this, you know, all the rage right now is infrared lights and red light therapy. And it's all along the same lines. And this even gets into, on the quantum biology side of things, the fact that basically we're large LEDs. We produce our own ultraviolet and infrared light. This is how mosquitoes find us. It's like a weird thing we never talk about. Except, you know, when you watch old war movies and they're like, they've got the infrared camera and, you know, you can see all the little bad guys running around in the dark. Why? Because they're producing light. Like, those things don't work if we're not producing these spectra of light. And we don't think about it because it's outside of our visual, our visual spectrum. But we actually have photoreceptors inside our body for this. And there's good evidence that we actually have an entire system of, oh my gosh, what's the phrase I'm looking for here? Fiber optics. So we kind of have like the same as, because there's certain phenomena in the human body that exist faster than electricity. And we can't really explain it until you start to learn light transmission. And light can be transmitted in the body faster than anything. And we basically have a system of fiber optics. And this would get into start looking into what fascia actually might be. And there's some people that are theorizing that fascia is actually acting as a fiber optic network within our system, which is why it would also be continuous through all organs, all nerves, like all tissues of the body have this interwoven fascia that connects us. Again, the trouble is we don't have the tools. Like we don't actually weirdly have the tools needed at this point in technology to measure these things. Like, we don't have a photo.
It's interesting you talk about fascia and perhaps like some of these subtle forces. Like I do feel a pull. Like there's a magnetic kind of pull that you can feel if you do some like osteopathic training or whatever. You can actually just feel there is a force there, and no one's, if everyone feels the same damn thing, we're not making this shit up, you know. So there are some subtle forces that that you can actually palpate. It's like, but how do you explain it? And I think that was part of what I wanted you to talk about too, is just say, look, some of this stuff's hard to like explain, or we have like really rudimentary understandings or whatever, but we still need to go there bravely or whatever.
Right. Yeah. My whole.
Sorry, I think that's one of the hardest things when it comes to patients too, is there's such an indoctrination of how the existence of this world, and we like things to be simple. So if you can see it, you can touch it, you can feel it, you can smell it, you can use your five senses, and it's real, right? And we take for granted, and I have to explain this to people all the time, you know, it's like, I explain it from a Newtonian physics perspective. And I was like, fine, like you want water is liquid at a certain vibration. But if you warm up the molecules and they have a faster vibration, turns into gas, because you can change the frequency of how those molecules vibrate. It's like, we are no different. We're electrical, we're vibrational, we're this. And I was like, nothing is solid matter. It's the illusion of solid matter. And then people are like, I don't understand how to conceptualize that, but it literally is the truth. Like, it's just, but it's hard for people to wrap their heads. Even for me, sometimes I hear these things and I'm like, this sounds really cool, but I don't actually know how to put it into practice, or I don't know how to make it tangible. I don't know how to implement it into creating certain types of change from a practical level too. Like, it sounds phenomenal, but you're kind of like, what do I do with this information now?
Right. And with it, that's like, it's in a way, it almost makes it freeing in the sense of you can get really down to basics of like, we know the importance of water. So is your patient properly hydrated? Like number one, you know, if they're not hydrated, don't expect healing to occur properly, because the system cannot, it's providing the fundamentals for what the system needs to regulate itself, and just kind of in a way having faith that the body will heal itself. Think of how a broken bone heals. What's the doctor's role? Set bone. Hold in place. You don't do anything else, right? And that's that weird idea that like, here's this like massive trauma that occurs to the human body, and if we basically line it up and stay out of its way, it's going to put itself back together properly. It's going to realign all the trabeculae. It's going to make sure that, you know, all the arteries, veins, nerves line up, the marrow can flow again. Like, it's going to completely rebuild itself. And again, this gets into that crazy idea of it forms the callus, and then but this gets into how does it know how to regulate that? How does it know not to build the callus too big? Forms the callus around the bone, then the bone heals, and after the bone's healed, it reabsorbs the callus. Also, how does it know not to over reabsorb the callus? Like, this gets into that, like, what's the grand regulator of this? You know, and this is where all of a sudden stuff like chi makes sense, where it's like, what is that? It's that fundamental underlying force of the body. And you know, and it's also almost like, again, the more you know, the more you just suddenly realize like, oh, like all of these ancient ideas about how the body works, you know, you can kind of indirectly measure them with modern science in a way, because we can see these areas that we don't understand. Like, if you ask even the best orthopedic surgeon in the world and you turn into your 2-year-old self, and I would say, but why? But why? But why? And what you get to is the end of science over and over and over again, where we don't understand why did the callus stop at that level? And they're like, well, this protein stopped transcribing. Okay, why? Don't know.
Yeah.
Why did the callus only get resorbed to this point? How did the body know? We don't know. This is that weird part of, you know, this is where you start to really get into the energetics of medicine, which admittedly, like I was hyper skeptical about when I started. I came out of university, biosci guy, nutritional biochemistry background. Like, I was pissed that we were going to have to learn homeopathy. Like, I was very resistant. I wanted nothing to do with homeopathy. And actually, the guy that changed me was Dr. David Lescheid. He's a naturopath. He works with Heal over in Germany now.
Does
Had
he?
his PhD in microbiology. I think he's the medical director for Heal now. But I went to preceptor with him one day and walked into this guy's office. I had a lot of respect for him. He taught us physiology at the time. And this guy treated almost exclusively with homeopathy. And I was like, dude, how do you resolve being like Mr. Science And then you turn around and you use all this like hokey woo woo, like guess a remedy kind of garbage. Was my approach at the time. Please homeopaths, don't send me hate mail. I'm getting to my point as to why I've completely reversed on this.
They're
And
too busy answering hate mail to send any.
Yeah. Well, he showed me so he showed me some dark field spectroscopy where it was basically like water molecules showing, and again back to yours, how the hydrogen was being how the hydrogen was sharing electrons with the oxygen, and you're basically taking pictures of where the atoms weren't, and all the different remedies, although you're just taking pictures of H2O over and over and over again, all the various different remedies had a different sharing pattern. And that blew my mind. I was like, really? Like there's actual science behind this? And he was like, yeah. And when you think of the human body as basically being a giant bag of water, and water being the substrate by which our entire system works, all of a sudden that makes a ton of sense. And then if you get into the work of Gerald Pollack and the exclusionary zones, and that whole idea that water actually exists more as H3O2 negative with hydrogen, and you create these, lattice works, the liquid crystal lattice works that then again create the electrochemical gradients. Now all of a sudden the way in which water molecules share electrons dramatically might influence the shape and contour of your exclusionary zones, thus dictating how electrons are shared in your body, how electrochemical gradients are created across the cell membranes. And homeopathy suddenly makes a ton of scientific sense. And
yeah, I would also say, even we brought this up in the pre-talk, the work of Veda Austin, who does work with water, and how there's these really cool imprints of water. She can put a picture, an image over it, and when you freeze it, it almost mimics the image. If you say a word over it, it like mimics it. And it's wild how it holds this energetic imprint in there, and then it crystallizes in ice form. And she's like, and I do this over and over again to validate one particular type of image in the ice. And she's like, and it's repetitively, you can replicate it several times. And it's
water is
thing.
life.
Water's the coolest thing.
You're spot on. Water is life.
Yeah. And isn't Gerald Pollack said stuff like too, he was like, it's still one of the most difficult things to study. Like we still don't fully get it. Like it's one of the, it's in everything. It is life. And we still don't fully understand how water operates the way it does. It's wild.
Yes, and even the Dr. Emoto was the other character in the, again, like how you think when you drink water, dictating the crystallization of the water as to whether it's symmetrical or not. And people have tried to debunk them and replicated his research. And again, that made people like me, who are like the hard science background, very, very uncomfortable. But being a true skeptic, my whole brain is like, I've got to be open to allowing new ideas in. And I think that's the most important thing in medicine is skepticism, which is it's not that you don't hold beliefs. It's just that you don't hold your beliefs as fact or dogma, and that you can, when presented evidence, change on the fly. And I think that's the number one thing that's helped me as a practitioner, is because you can accept that you're wrong at times, and that, your understanding of the world is going to change. And that's like one of my biggest pieces of advice. And that then even when you measure these issues, because of course, like the question then is like, well, what water do I drink? Because this I get from patients all the time. And my answer is enough. Because like the reality of it is most people just aren't consuming enough. And I try to, again, I'm like, and add some salt to it, because if you add a quarter teaspoon of sea salt to a liter of water, you get to 25 milliosmoles, which is basically the optimal osmolality for absorption of that water. So if you drink pure water, like reverse osmosis, it actually doesn't hydrate you as well. If you remineralize, which again gets into like, what's that wisdom of the body? But when you remineralize it, it will increase the absorption rate and your utilization of the water by the body. So I always say, like, take every liter of water, add a quarter teaspoon of sea salt, drink that. And it's really keeping it simple, because like our conversation here just got very intense, very complicated, right into quantum biology, right into the energetics of cells. So you have a deeper understanding of why these things are important. But at the end of the day, how do you translate it to patients? And it's like, drink enough water. Set a timer on your phone. Like if you don't, like I have a rule with people, either draw it on your water bottle, like the times of the day. And my thing is I make them punish themselves. Like if you have like a liter of water bottle and it says drink it by 11 a.m. and you haven't touched that thing and it's 11 a.m., like you have 10 minutes to finish that bottle of water. I don't know how many of you have ever tried to drink a liter of water in 10 minutes. Yeah, not a very comfortable experience.
No.
And then they learn to start to drink their water. It's like set these rules for yourself hard and fast. And it's in the idea of goal setting. Like goal setting isn't necessarily about achieving the goal. To me, it's all about like who you become in trying to achieve the goal. Whether you fail or not, it's about like kind of creating those habits and behaviors and understanding that, you know, for some people, like depending on the type of practice you have, if you have people that have no sort of self-care background, you're going to start with the basics, like just, you know, start drinking water, move your body, like do some stretches. And then if you see a lot of biohackers and, you know, then you next thing you know, you're into talking about all the things we're not allowed to talk about, like methylene blue and psilocybin and all those kind of things. Yeah. With them, but again, it's like a whole other world of depending on your patient level as to how you're going to interact with that person. But I'd argue that 90% of your clients, and even the ones, like I find a lot of people that come into my office and they're, you know, I've watched this special, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm cold plunging, I'm doing these things. But within a few seconds, it's like, what time do you go to bed? How much water do you drink? How do you move and they just fail right away on some of the absolute basics. So I always do a pre-screen of everybody, not to let them dictate the where the appointment goes, and make sure they get their fundamentals in order first before we even get into some of the speedy stuff or like the more complicated stuff.
Well,
and I think that's
sorry, John, the fundamentals is something I want to talk to you about, and I feel like it's a great link between like the past of naturopathic medicine or the past of, let's just say, medicine in general, because I don't even like, it's just medicine is good or not good kind of thing. You know, you can fly a different banner, but whatever. To link it to and we talk about like, you know, these ideas of what's going on with like electrons and like, you know, we're talking about, you know, higher end, you know, fourth dimension of water or whatever. But the thing that, you know, in terms of like a practical implementation of things that link the past and the future, let's say, of medicine, what are some of the most important just practices that you think are making your outcomes with patients better, even though they're simpler in some ways, which you alluded to when we were chatting before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like honestly, the simplest ones, as I've, you know, hit
Water,
on a couple
obviously.
times. Water's obviously one. Get outside. 30 minutes outside a day. I don't care how cold out it is. Literally, I've told, I'm like, go get a dog if you need whatever your motivator is that you need to get outside. Do it. Like you're not designed to be a cave dweller.
Just outside.
Like you don't have to be barefoot outside.
I don't even get that picky.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a good start.
If you can go barefoot outside, that's better. And I mean, we live in Canada. You're not doing 30 minutes barefoot outside the dead of winter. Let's call it what it is. Right. That's not like, yeah, frostbite is not the outcome we're looking for here. No, but it's get outside. I always say, you know, try to touch nature. So if you can get outside on natural surfaces, that's better. You know, like if you go for a walk in the park, stick to the grass, don't stick to the path. Little simple stuff like that, to try to teach people like some of the basic habits. I ideally try to watch the sunrise and sunset, understanding that like we have an entire nervous system and this whole setup inside of our bodies for what are, I mean, I love the words, I'm going to say it, Zeitgebers, which is like basically light signals. And like if you're blind, you actually have nerves in your eye that pick up sunrise and sunset regardless of your ability to see. It's the same it's the same cells that actually make up reptile skin. And that's so you have that's a Jack Cruzism, yeah. And like and I fact checked them because again, like as much as I love Jack Cruz, I still want to make sure that I'm not just repeating things that may not be true. But yeah, no, it's we have these little neurons that literally extend from our brain into the back of our eyes, designed specifically to pick these things up, that then regulate, they attach to the areas of the brain that regulate our circadian rhythms. And our circadian rhythms then regulate our hormonal balance. So you got people with like bad PMS, you got people with adrenal fatigue, you got people with thyroid problems, you got people with PCOS, you got all of these endocrinopathies, these dysregulation issues. And it's like, step one. Now, are you going to see a difference in 2 weeks? No, very unlikely. Like, it's going to take you months because, again, you've lived in this world of light pollution, artificial light for so long that system is so far away from properly regulated. But as you gain these behaviors, all of a sudden you see like, oh, my energy is really stable through the day. My hormones are balancing out. And so it's really bringing people back to like, I don't care where you live. You could live in the heart of the city. You can live, like I moved to a farm literally because of my beliefs on all of this. Humans, the biggest thing I find is humans like to pretend we sit up here and the rest of the world is down here, or the rest of the ecosystem is down here, when in fact it's one flat line. Like nature's pretty brutal. It doesn't really, nature doesn't have feelings. It's not about that. And so it's I think it's understanding that part. And then making sure.
John, would you put grounding into this? Like, I know I'm really focused on
I try to make everybody go outside and touch the earth with their bare skin in some way. And in the winter, like if you can't do it barefoot, even just going up and putting your bare hand on a tree will do this exact same thing.
I'm the weird woman in the park.
Yeah, I'm the tree. I'm like the legitimate tree hugger. And the Japanese have studied the hell out of this. Shinrin, what's it called? Shinrin Roku. Yeah, forest bathing. And I think it's Shinrin Roku or Yoku, and it's forest bathing, and measurable decreases in cortisol. Do you need an ashwagandha supplement? Like, it might help, but like you also just need to be outside in nature. Yeah. Like that's like what we are. We have all these neurons and systems designed to read nature, and when you don't expose yourself to nature, they go haywire. It's like the idea of allergy and the sterility theory behind allergy. Eosinophils and basophils are designed to treat parasites, are designed to help manage our parasitic or our helminthic load. And when we don't have enough exposure, we have higher rates of allergy, to the point that there was like a great study out of Florida. They found hookworm in a bunch of kids. So they decided to deworm the entire county in this one county in Florida. And lo and behold, within a few years, the allergy rate had gone up 20-fold. Why? Because we took worms out of people that weren't symptomatic. Like we have all these ideas. It's like we find these things and we label them as bad, but we don't know. It's like I taught a course years ago on candida, and I kind of laugh at myself for it, because candida can be an issue, but it's also found in pretty much every human all the time. Yeah, it's just an opportunistic parasite. So the presence of Candida albicans doesn't mean you have a candida issue. Also, if you're vaginally born, you have 7,000 species of bacteria in you. The idea that we blame everything on like one bacteria is, again, this weird scientific hubris. Like, we don't know. So for me, I look at it instead, what are you doing to support your biome dietarily? What are you doing by getting outside in nature? So I'm big on the grounding thing like that. I do try to get my patients to do grounding. The other one is temperature. Get yourself uncomfortable temperature wise. We are not designed to live at 20 degrees centigrade all the time, which is what we do. And weirdly, our body has all these features designed to accommodate adjustments in temperature that you can train. And I don't mean you necessarily have to go and try and become Wim Hof. I feel like he's missing a few pieces there, as well as to the full understanding. But as far as like heat shock proteins, how it stimulates healing, getting yourself a little uncomfortable can actually be very, very healing. And then the same thing of like exercise and movement. If you own a dog or a cat, watch it get up. What's the first thing it does? It doesn't run for the coffee maker. It stretches. So like the other thing I try to teach patients to do is like stretch a little in the morning. Like get up and just take like a few minutes to just sort of warm your body up. And they were like, well, what stretch should I do? I'm like, I don't know. What feels like start to pay attention to your body and what feels tight and work on that. Because when you become, and I know you're a fascial practitioner, as like doing the osteopathy side, it's like you start to realize, where you experience pain and where is not necessarily where the problem originates.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's like, you could have really tense fascia in your left hip and it's manifesting as right shoulder pain because that's where you're feeling the mechanical restriction when you go to move it. But the problem is actually like if you pay attention where you're tight, not where you're sore, that's when you start to really feel it. So I try to get patients to do a body scan. That's the other one. Before you go to bed, easiest way to get yourself to sleep, body scanning. Start at your toes. How do you feel? Work your way up to your head or your nose. I always say like toes to nose, do a body scan. And it's like those real basic ideas. And when you get those fundamentals in order, it's amazing all the simple, not even all the simple things that get better, all the complex things that get better.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, yeah. So sleep was one of the reasons I brought up the grounding thing, because I saw this thing on a grounding sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And you plug it into your wall or outside if you can. And I thought, because one of my big things is if you can optimize sleep, like do it. You're doing nothing kind of anyway. So like that's why I do mouth taping at night. And if there's any, like if you can do a body scan before bed, if there's any sort of, I even get people just as a ritual, do a tea before bed or have a bath like anything you can do simple to engender a good sleep. Is great. And I'll follow up with you. Maybe I'm going to build my own, or like I'm going to make a grounding mat for my bed, because then I'm getting hopefully 7 or 8 hours of like time that I'm less exposed to EMFs.
There's also
And
grounding mats you can have at your desk. And I have some people who work from home, and I was like, well, then be barefoot and put your feet on while you're on the computer around junk electricity, put your feet on the grounding mat. And they've noticed a difference in their energy input and output now. Like they don't get as exhausted and stuff like that too. It's pretty
very
great.
interesting.
Yeah, magnetics as well too. There's magnetic mats and magnetic sheets you can put in beds if you don't have great access to the outdoors for setting up a grounding mat. And there's even things you can buy that will ground your outlets to stop the release of dirty electricity. Yeah. I worked in a clinic with a medical doctor years ago, and he had a machine that would basically measure all the dirty electricity.
Cool.
And we played around with it with like the microwave was one, because we had a microwave in our staff room. That was funny because he and I never used it, but it was just there for the other staff because they wanted it. And so one day we just put a pot of water or like a cup of water in it and measured it before. And then the just nasty electromagnetic radiation that flew off of it as soon as we turned on, we both kind of looked at each other, turned off the microwave, and like left the room because we're like, I don't like the idea of that, because we understood the impact it's had. Like I had one patient, they put a cell tower, and this is pre 5G, but he lived in the penthouse condo, and he ended up trading down because they put a cell tower on his condo building. And he started developing migraines all the time.
It's not the first time I've heard that.
No, what tipped me off to it was he went away on a vacation, and he was like, and his migraines went away. And I was like, oh, it's your building. He's like, what? I thought it was, I was like, yeah, no, it's. And then I asked him the question, any new cell towers? He's like, actually, I'm pretty sure that just happened within the last year. I'm like, and let me guess, the migraines in the last year? He's like, yep. So weirdly, he was friends with the super on the first floor. They traded apartments for a week. He went a week with no migraines, went back to his condo up in the penthouse, migraines. And so he liked the building. So he ended up selling his penthouse, getting a 4th floor one, and his migraines were gone, and he was good to carry on. And that was kind of the end of our relationship, because he was there for the migraines. But it's a lot of time, those like uncomfortable, and no amount of feverfew and magnesium and B1. The standard functional medicine migraine approach is going to work, right? Again, I sometimes see miracles with feverfew, B1, and magnesium. Why can't I quote it by heart? Because it can work. But again, that's like the natural version of aspirin that you give in between until you figure out the cause.
Right.
And so that's that whole whole approach. It's like the thyroid thing. Like, people, okay, I got PFO. Now I suspect I've had PFOA damage because I was like a huge, the world's biggest consumer of Teflon products. But forskolin from Coleus forscoli seems to reverse some of the effect of this.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's ways that, again, you can kind of apply, the herbal medicine side, the supplement side. But again, it's like the functional medicine side of it is like you have to understand that cause so that then even if because I'd be a complete hypocrite if I said I don't use supplements. I mean, I do all the time because we also live in the Google generation. People expect a pill that's going to help them feel better. And the reality of it is not everybody's going to make a ton of these changes or are capable of it, right? They're like, they come to see you and they're 4 years from retirement. They're not walking away from their toxic job at that point, giving up their full passion. They're going to be like, hey,
you got to work with what they got.
They're like, I realize this is my problem. Can you help me stay as healthy as I can for the next 4 years? And then I'm going to continue with you for 4 years. And then in 4 years, when I quit when I retire, then I'm going to really make the changes that I need to do to really attain my health. But they're like, I'm kind of this invested. And you understand, like it's practical medicine, right? Like, we can get very, like, oh, you got to do grounding and cold plunging and walk barefoot in nature and hug trees and, eat. My other one is variety, eating like a larger and larger and larger variety of products, both animal and plant. And I don't think we eat enough of that. Like, I feel like we eat too much muscle, not enough organ. I've got a lot of and as a reformed vegetarian, that's a weird one for me, but but I feel like there's a lot of stuff that we're really missing in the health sphere that way too. Like even in diet, ask people to write down. That's one of the tools I do, is try one new food a week. That's 52 a year. And they kind of look at you weird. Like by week 50, you're really struggling to find something new. If you actually were to write down on a piece of paper, most people do not exceed 20 different fruits and vegetables. Where our ancestors, various studies show different numbers, but it was around 200 because we had to eat seasonally. And that's when I try to, that's my other thing is when in doubt, try to eat foods in season as best you can, which really pisses off people who want their strawberry smoothie in February, but that's not a time you're going to naturally see a lot of strawberries. That's a time you're going to eat a lot of, like the winter was a time for like roots.
Beets and cabbages.
Beets and cabbages and potatoes.
My Polish ancestry shines in this season.
Right. But again, why was that your ancestry, climate, right? Like because of the cold climate, and that's what you had, because that's what survived.
Literally had beet soup today.
Right. Why do I just made a giant coleslaw and then washed potatoes actually right before I was on the potatoes I grew this summer. I pulled out of our cold cellar and was washing them in the sink before I jumped on here. You look at all that, like, why do you guys have hostas in your yard? No. Oh, okay. Wow. That's like the first time I've asked that question. People said no. Pretty much everybody has a hosta. Do you know why?
No.
First greens in the spring. It's in the asparagus family. It tastes kind of like the love child between asparagus and bok choy, and those little spikes when they come up in the spring are edible.
Maybe I do, and I just don't know.
Yeah, it's like one of those areas again where like we have all these foods around. Like if you walk through, I put myself through school landscaping, and when you walk through a garden and you start to realize like, it's like, oh, what do you got there? Yarrow, Achillea millefolium, medicine. You got your echinacea, medicine. You got your hosta, food. You got your astilbe, which is Simicifuga racemosa, which is your black cohosh. You got like all of a sudden you can walk through somebody's like flower garden and you realize that why do we cultivate most of those flowers? It's a holdover from our ancestry where we weren't cultivating pretty flowers, we were cultivating medicine. And then we selected them to be prettier.
Mm-hmm.
Like then it became a thing that you had the prettier medicine yard, you had the prettier food yard. But at the end of the day, most of the foods we were growing were medicine foods. And and this was it's incorporating those things where like we have this delineation where we call things like, oh, this is a herb for medicine and this is a food. And I kind of chuckle about this because you can buy lion's mane capsules at 500 milligrams. And then I walk across the street to the health food store, and we've got a great mushroom grower in my area, and I buy big lion's mane mushrooms, eat a pound of lion's mane with dinner. And I'm going like, okay, I can take 500 milligrams in the capsule, or I can sit down and eat 454 grams of lion's mane in a sitting. And, we might be worried. We have patients that are worried of taking like, can I take 4 lion's mane at once? I'm like, I don't know. I just ate 400 grams of it, so probably. And we just have this weird delineation, and it's kind of what you were alluding to a little bit before there of like, medicine. Like I always joke I don't believe in naturopaths, and really because to me this whole idea that we have like the pharmaceutical doctors, we have the herbal doctors, we have to me it should all just be all medicine, and all doctors should be focused on looking at what's in the best interest of the patient. Like I always say, I'm not anti-pharmacy, I'm not anti-surgery. Like one of my newest areas I'm looking into is nicotine. Like it's like the N word of medicine, except that it's a very, very powerful nootropic, a very, very powerful drug in neurology. And I've had a few patients where I actually counsel them to go get like nicotine gum, of all things, and but you chew it for like 10 seconds and spit it out. And they're just microdosing themselves on nicotine and the impact it has on their system. And weirdly, many times their anxiety is wild. Too much is a problem, but too little is also a problem.
It's so funny. One of my sisters, she was a smoker back in the day, and only one. I remember he was our physics professor, Mr. Serengali's. He was ambidextrous too, because he could write on the board and then switch hands and just seamlessly continue. And he taught both she and I. So she asked me if I had him with my physics class, and I was like, yeah. She was like, do you know he's the only teacher that recognized when I was starting to have like a difficult time focusing in class, he would literally just go outside and have a smoke and come back, because he knew she was super smart, but she would lose her focus if she didn't have a little fix. And he's like, just go outside. Yep. And he'd let her come back, and then she was like back on track, and she was like a straight A student, right? Like
yeah it's one of these things, like, and start looking around at where you find nicotine in plants. It's not just tobacco. And that's the thing, we have all these nicotine receptors in our system specifically for focus. And you could make an argument, probably, although I don't know how to get this one approved, of probably nicotine gum for ADHD kids. I know it's like, and it's like I said, it's like the N word. People are like, because as soon as you say nicotine, they assume like you're like, smoking's terrible. I'm like, no, whoa, I didn't say smoking. Like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, those are being conflated. Those two things are being conflated.
Right, and that's the area that you have to watch out for. But yeah, no, there's some really cool research coming out on nicotine. You start to look at the benefits of nicotine and caffeine and all these things. And
I was just gonna say it's like coffee and caffeine, because I dislike the conflation of coffee and caffeine. Coffee is a stomach irritant, which causes a whole bunch of problems. It's not necessarily yes, it contains caffeine, but does caffeine define coffee? No.
It's the same reason why I do coffee enemas. People might not be able to ingest it, but if you can do a coffee enema, those caffeic and palmitic acids interact with the liver and cause positive benefits administered from a different area.
Right. Yeah. And then the weird one is you look at coffee as being neuroprotective against Parkinson's.
Right.
So it's like, what's at what point
something's going on there?
Yeah. And you got to sit there and go, oh, this is really uncomfortable, because like I kind of mentioned it, and like, as I sit here, and you don't recommend coffee. I drink coffee. I'm like a big, I again, depending on gut tolerance, or tea. Like I'm a big tea and coffee guy. And I never grew up drinking coffee. I had to teach myself because of the research I was doing on Parkinson's, and I've got a family history of it. So like my whole goal is to die of something else. And not Parkinson's. And so that's why I took to and trained myself to drink coffee. And I've become a huge coffee snob because of it. but it's for the neuroprotective effects. And I do a lot of neurology, hence my my intrigue and interest in nicotine. And my new issue is if we could get what I'd love to see Canada bring in is buccal troches, because you can get these in the States. You can buy them, and they're transdermal buccal troche. So it's like something you stick up in your gums, and basically it delivers the whatever substance it is directly to your brain. Yeah, and so they've got a whole bunch down in the States where you can buy them. They're like nicotine, CBD, caffeine, and methylene blue all mixed together, which is again a whole other area when you look at antioxidants, and that's another one. Everyone's like antioxidant. Pro-oxidants and oxidative radicals are also messaging molecules. So I'm always cautionary on that don't overuse antioxidants. You're helping this person, because you may actually be interfering in cellular signaling. It's really kind of understanding it at a deeper level. And that's like, wait, pro-oxidants are good? And it's like, well, like they are.
Well, it's the same thing as like inflammation. Inflammation has a purpose. Inflammation has a purpose, but when it becomes chronic and unchallenged, then it becomes a problem. And it's just about having the balance and allowing your body to do what it needs to do when it needs to do it, and then come back into a state of balance. It's really what we all, I think, lose sight over, and it's hard to teach, and it's hard to
Right, like the benefit of a fever, right? A fever is super beneficial unless it's too high, and you're going to get it's going to get febrile seizures, and you're going to have brain damage from seizures, and you run into these issues. It's like, and at that point, you know what? You can use a tepid bath to try to bring the fever down, and you can use this to try to bring the fever down, and you can do all these things. And guess what? And if none of it works, a massive dose of white willow bark for the salicylic acid, or God forbid, ibuprofen. Oh, wow. It's like to recommend a pharmaceutical product as a naturopath is like sacrilege, but there's a time and a place for the use of these things if you understand proper use.
That's what I was saying. I don't care if you're a naturopath or a medical doctor, like good medicine is good medicine. If it's effective for the person and it's safe, sign me up, Right. Jon, you said recently things have gotten simpler for you in practice, or is it maybe just like a deeper, better, more pragmatic understanding of the implementing the foundational stuff? You said it's made your results better, and like everything's better, getting simpler. Can you expand any more on that? 'Cause I just find that a natural progression, at least for me, and I want to hear what it's like for you.
Me too.
I used to prescribe boatloads of supplements, and what's the latest and greatest, and this new research and what's hot, and get a little caught up in the evidence-based medicine world, and you start to realize how poor much of the evidence actually is. And thinking outside just these kind of like biomarkers, and like what do you really got to understand what biomarkers mean, right? Is the big one. Like cholesterol is a perfect example of that. People get so hung up on cholesterol. Like if I have a patient who's had a stroke, I want their cholesterol to go up. Sacrilegious, I know, but 25% of your brain is cholesterol. How is it fixing itself with that raw material? And then I give them a super high cholesterol diet and watch them recover. And so when we look at these things, like it's getting back to fundamentals is really like, if you don't know your alphabet, you can't write poetry. Like William Shakespeare didn't start with just writing sonnets, right? Like he started with the basic, the basics of the alphabet. And then you start the basics of understanding vocabulary. And then, you start the basic rules of the English language. And stuff that I literally teaching my kids to learn to read. These are things that we were never taught in school. Like, do you know why the word live and the word live are spelt the same, but said differently? Did you know English words are not allowed to end in the letter V, I, or J?
What?
Yeah, that's why we add an E on the end. These are things that like no one, right? Yeah, you're like, and then you think about it and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. And I think U is the other one. So we add these silent E's to the end, and that's why live and live are the same. And we've got all these like weird rules in the English language. So it's the same idea of you have to learn these, like once you learn these underlying fundamental rules of how
Muesli
gives, not English.
But that's not an English word.
So this is like, that's the trouble, is like, yeah, you'll pick out all these words, and it's foreign words that English people say.
Right.
And you're like, you don't think I did the exact same thing? Of course I did. I'm a rebel.
Nice try,
like,
Dave. Nice try.
Yeah, give me a rule and I'm gonna break it. But yeah, so really what I got down to though is it's along those lines of thinking. It was like I was, doctors want to get right into the sonnet, and for me, I was like, no, I'm gonna basically sit down in front of my patient and say, recite for me the alphabet. And they're like, okay, cool. And then I, work on vocabulary with them, using this obviously as an analogy. But it's like what I've realized is when you provide the human system with the basic fundamentals that it needs to heal itself, it heals itself. Like that's true naturopathy. It's like basically like as a doctor, get out of the way as much as you can.
Yeah.
Like it's there's times where like there's intoxicants that are in the way, so you got to mess around with the person to help remove an intoxicant that's bothering them. Like that's that whole, I suspect they've had too much exposure to PFOA. I'm now going to come in with some Coleus for Scoli, and I'm going to get forskolin into them to try to undo the genetic change that the PFOA had on this person. And you have to understand that, but it's like, but I don't really want to do a ton to shift, to try to force their body in a specific direction. Really, it's like what I want to do is like incubate them. Like you want to be
Oh man, you've got reverence for the healing power of the body. I feel like all the best doctors do like that. Burrell says, what is he, Michelle? Do you remember what he says? He says the body is always waiting for the therapist to go away.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I learned. And it was like
little things like that.
And we have this, and we're trained in it, that we're doctors and we have to heal, and it's going to be our ego. Like our ego is going to fix this person, and we're going to take credit for it. And like anytime my patients come in and they're like, thank you, you helped me. And I'm like, no. Thank you for making me look good. And they're like, what?
Yeah,
like, I didn't like, I just sat across from you and talked. Like, yeah, I looked at your ear and I checked this and I checked that. And I figured out what you had. But I just sat across from you and talked, and then you went home and you integrated these things. And I'm going to help you integrate it, but I'm like, I look like I don't look effective unless you do the work. So this is like my whole, like, you got to coach people into like teaching them how to do the work, and really coaching them on how to do the fundamentals. Because like, even if you get a great result with a supplement, how long is that person going to stay on it? How long is it going to work? If you're just
last.
Well, and that's the thing. If you're just masking a symptom by, upregulating some other pathway, the body's going to figure that out and compensate, because that's not what it wants. And so it's exactly like, as you said, the vis medicatrix naturae, right? The healing power of nature, to be like hyper cliche, and it is. And so that's when I say it's like breaking it down to the fundamentals. Like the course that I'm dropping is really about that. And what I'm trying to basically teach doctors how to do is quickly assess patients from like a basic 6 fundamentals, like looking at intoxication, physical trauma, emotional trauma, nutrition, hydration, and lifestyle. And then prioritizing where the majority of their disease is coming from in those areas, and then triaging a treatment plan based on correcting those areas.
Ooh, sounds good to me.
And this is
right?
what
Like,
your pre-qualified CE course is about to help with naturopaths and wellness professionals. That's what the basis of this is.
Yeah, it's that's why I call it like that's why I call it functional medicine practice blueprint, because it's like I can't to try to teach somebody like all the integration of functional medicine is near impossible. I mean, that's like I've the number of courses and hours I've taken of CE credits. I think I handed in once 220 hours in one of my CE reporting cycles. I'm a dork. I love this. It's all I spend my time doing. But again, like when you do that kind of stuff, you still look at it and you go like, I can't teach all of that. But what I can teach is, how do you simply integrate this stuff? with people.
Mhm.
Like we want to get very, very complicated. And what I actually try to teach people is like, how do you break it down into a very simple algorithm, like system, so you can stay individualized, you can stay true to the vis medicatrix naturae, like you can stay true to like what you really want to do, fundamental medicine. But that's why I call it that. Like that's why I prefer the term fundamental medicine, but I figured if I named my course that, no one would understand what the hell I was talking about. So it's hence functional medicine practice blueprint, but it's really like foundational medicine. Like teach people to identify the breakdown and like what's missing in the foundation. Like if you don't have a good foundation, you can't build that house.
Right.
And so it's
Abs-
like
you know
you
what?
can build the most beautiful structure as long as you have a sound foundation.
Yeah, exactly. I do use that analogy a lot. I was like, you don't build the 15th floor of a condo. You dig and you pour some serious concrete, like first step one. And then
Right.
Jon, where do we go to find out more about that? Because I think like
Yeah.
I think it's a good time to wrap up, because that's like the essence. What you just said there is basically the essence of what I was hoping we'd start and like get across with
Right.
the details. Where do people go
Yeah.
for next step for checking out this functional medicine wellness or
I'm literally
functional medicine
signing
Well,
up.
practice blueprint?
Literally
Yeah.
signing up after
Well,
this.
People includes me.
And me.
yeah. Well, my complicated link is like my new social media handle, because I don't really like social media, but my wife's encouraged me that I should probably get on it. So
Right.
Jon Beatty ND is my Instagram.
Hey.
I also have, and if you're more interested in like my less professional side, I'm also JTBND, which is like my initials with ND at the end, is my other Instagram. That's like, if you want to see my cows, that's the one you got to go to. Although my cows, I think, do make cameos in my professional side too.
I want to see your cows.
Yeah, they're lovely. I love them. Yeah, and so there's links through that. And I'm pretty sure my website's been updated to have this. If not, I'm gonna jump on and search and update it today. But bdnaturopathic.com for the course, and it just links to my Kajabi, and it's all Kano's pre-approved it for I think 5 hours, and then it works differently in BC, Alberta, and areas like that. Like they don't have pre-approval unless you're, I think, pharmaceutical, unless it's like pharmacy stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, it qualifies in every jurisdiction.
Category 1.
Yeah, it's what's that? Category A in Ontario.
Sorry, category A.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. It's category A. Yeah, it's category A Ontario. Everywhere else, it's like it qualifies because I got it. Yeah, that's the place.
I'm in.
That's the
I'm
one.
literally
Yeah.
signing up at the after we stop recording. Here's my money, Jon. Let's because
Oh, go on.
No. Because everything you've mentioned, bar pre-talk, during this talk, and like I was even saying at some point too, it all sounds fantastic, but you still need to be able to apply it practically and articulate it to clients and put the pieces of the puzzle together and understand where to start. And I feel like sometimes as a naturopath, I still get into the trap of here's a pharmaceutical, not a pharmaceutical, here's a nutraceutical, here's an antiparasitic protocol. A lot of people are coming to us really like congested though. So I do believe that what I'm giving is merit. There's merit behind it, but I still want to be able to find the language and the ability to get people to trust this other part of the process more and invest in that part of the process. Because I find that's the hardest thing sometimes.
And it's important to do. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's like you like we exist a bunch of naturopaths talking, and we can get really into that side of it. But at the end of the day, like I actually got off the phone with a patient today, and she'd seen a naturopath years ago, didn't really get anywhere, and wasn't really that happy and was very skeptical of naturopathy. And I guess more than one friend had mentioned they needed to come see me. And so we started working, but it was solving her initial problem, which was very kind of like, and I realized who I was dealing with. So it was very supplement focused, not as intensive, got my buy-in with her. And so like, that's the thing where you like I mean, we're the quacks of of the medical community. Like there's naturopathy, and I don't mean that in that naturopaths only. Like I believe medical doctors can practice naturopathy. I kind of think of naturopathy as more of like medicine done right. where you're getting at that fundamental medicine. But when you do that stuff, it really kind of takes away from the industry. Without getting too political, sick people make the medical industry a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so, us, like I strive, for me, perfect clinical success is I have an empty patient list. Like there's nobody left to see. We don't have any sick people, and I got to go get a new job. And that's like my success as a naturopath is putting myself out of work. And I think that kind of throws people off. But that's my goal for society, is that we return to working together to kind of create a healthy way to live. And, I don't necessarily think that much of the quote unquote progress we've made and a lot of the tools we've made to simplify our lives have actually necessarily done that. They've just changed our problems a lot of the time. It's like, so anyway, functional medicine practice blueprint. I'm sure if you just look it up, you'll stumble across it. And it's my attempt at trying to teach people really like how to integrate things. And there's sections devoted in there to like coaching your client. So like literal basic systems of how to break it down. And I tried to make it accessible so that most of them, my original goal was to try to make each session 20 minutes. As you can tell, I'm a little long-winded, so most of them ended up about 40, because I just like to hear myself talk, and I'm a natural questioner, so I need personally to have things explained in a way that I understand them in order for me to do them. Like, in fact, if you tell me to do something because it's a rule, the very chances are that I'm going to try to find every loophole and way around it, just out of my very nature. Like, yeah.
Well, I mean, I like listening to you talk, and I appreciate what you have to say. Even if you feel like you're long-winded, you always give very intelligent, incredible information. And yes, it can get heady, and yes, we can talk Jack Cruz, and yes, we can talk quantum this and blah, 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 but you always bring it back into a place where there's a really good metaphor, or there's an analogy, or you bring it into a way that's tangible for not just our listeners to be able to appreciate, whether they're just the common person and just the general public, or they are naturopaths. I feel like you provide great information, which is why I've literally started filling out all my information for your course as we speak. And now I just have to put my credit card information in.
Thank you. Yeah, because well, that's what I try to do, because it's when you get into, like, if you have a deeper knowledge of say like quantum biology and some of these systems, then you have to learn how to communicate that to patients in a way that's practical. And and then of course you become a lifelong student, so I've had to learn a lot about engines, because you can use cars very easily to explain a lot of biological systems. You use what you know and things that you share in common with your audience, and that's like an easy way to connect with your patient, to earn trust, so that they're going to listen to you and do those things that you're asking them to do. Because if you're doing medicine well, you're asking them to do the hard stuff. Everybody wants the easy button. Everybody wants that easy answer. And the toughest part, I think, of being a functional medicine practitioner, doing foundational medicine, is you're asking people not like to do it the hard way, really. And my whole approach, though, is our phrase in our household, and I think I said this last time I was on, is choose your hard. Like, life is hard. You're going to get it. It's going to be hard one way or another. And, you may not want to do all that hard work at first, but then you got to go through, like, I had a patient lament to me. She's like, I should have listened, because, they're in hospital right now awaiting surgery, because they just really weren't compliant over a long time, with a concern they had. And now it's injured them to the point that surgery is probably their best option. And they recognize that they also probably could have avoided it had they just listened, because we figured out what was causing their problem. And then they just, old habits die hard. And you get into the coaching around self-injurious behavior. But yeah.
Well, we always love having you on the show. You're a plethora of knowledge. Thank you for coming on today and piecing a bunch of
You're
these
welcome.
awesome, interesting bits of information and just grounding us back into foundational medicine with all of that. See the pun? See how I put that in there?
I saw that. Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to put together like a deep dive for you guys, and we can focus maybe on like grounding and electricity in a future chat, and really dive into that one if you guys want, because
I'm in.
that's yeah, it's been since about April of this year. That's been my my deep dive of trying to put together, trying to synthesize together the work of Jack Kruse, Gerald Pollack, Dr. Emoto, some of the grounding work, and really synthesizing all that together to the point that I even do electro gardening now, and got about a 20% increase in the yield of my vegetables. So,
Well, he wants to go deeper, but I'm still coming up for air. So
we're gonna leave it at this, and then we'll reconvene for electricity and grounding talk at a later date, because I think this was already a lot for our patients and our listeners to chew on, but it's awesome. And for all those naturopaths at home who want to understand how to bring that foundational medicine back into their practice in a more comprehensive way, do go check out Jonathan Beatty and the links. Honestly, his Instagram account, it was right there in the bio. The link was easy. I'm literally just going to press enter and then I'm good to go. So for naturopaths who want to understand how to integrate it better, it's not that hard to find that information through his Instagram account. So I suggest it.
Thanks so much, Jon.
Oh, thanks for having me again, guys. Always a pleasure.